Hello subscribers and others, it's David Hoffman, filmmaker, and you know that I collect these films from the 1950s. And I'm very interested in that period of time because I lived during that time and because I think it would be helpful to you, my audience. So you're about to see a clip from a film about post-war Europe and the people who were growing up at that time. People who had lived through war, all the buildings destroyed, people starving, many people whose family members had died or people they knew had died, children who were put in kind of slave camps where they worked during the war for the Nazis. This was a terrifically rough time for Europeans. And I think this documentary, done at that time, is amazing in what it says. I've had some personal experience with this because although I grew up in the United States where we didn't have any bombed out buildings and we had food, we did know some people whose fathers had died, but we didn't have anything like what Europeans experienced. And I have some friends who are German and they fear starvation. And I hope that a fair number of people who see this are from Europe and lived through this time, could comment on it. I really appreciate the comments that I'm getting from so many of you. Thank you. Take a look at this documentary clip. Tell me what you think.
A una persona del popolo.
To tell a working man in Turin in the 1950s that in 8 years he'd own a car was like telling a man in 1500, one day I'll take you to the moon.
Guarda che ti porto sulla luna.
In England in 1959, the recovery was so complete that an election was won with the slogan, "You've never had it so good."
As the Prime Minister has said, the standard of living has gone up. We are better fed, better clothed. We're using more electricity. More people have motor cars, bicycles, television, and a host of other things, which only a few years ago were the luxuries of the few.
The first thing I wanted in the house was a television, and then the other household goods. Every month there was something else to buy.
La lavatrice, ogni mese doveva fare una spesa e cercare di fare una spesa. Tutti cominciavano a comprare la macchina e mi sono preso una.
In the 60s, everyone started to buy cars, and I bought a Fiat 500. I went with my wife to Fiat.
Sono andato a consegnarmelo in Fiat. Ho portato la moglie lì, mi sono messo dentro.
I felt so emotional that my legs were shaking. I was so excited. I'd worked and waited such a long time for this car.
After the war, all politicians agreed it was the government's duty to see that everyone had a job. Now full employment had become a reality.
There was money to be earned. Money to be earned and spent. So I enjoyed it. That's what I think money's for. Earn a pound, spend a pound.
Cheap credit made spending even easier. Televisions, carpets, cars, all were bought on the installment plan, with plenty of time to pay. In France, cities were deserted as workers took ever longer vacations. The new generation had put the austerity of their childhoods behind them. They'd grown up to become a group that had never been known before, teenage consumers. They spent with abandon. They followed American trends and bought American records. France even produced its own version of a rock and roll star, Johnny Hallyday.
Qu'est-ce que Brigitte Bardot? Un élément non négligeable du commerce extérieur français. On lui est redevable, en partie, de l'équilibre approximatif de la balance import-export qui vient d'être enregistré pour la première fois depuis de nombreuses années. Mais, bien sûr, le redressement sensationnel de l'exportation française a...
They had a new economic independence. Europe's new companies were thriving, and growth was aided by exports.
Et de tuyaux de fonte pour adduction. Pour pouvoir exporter, il faut d'abord disposer d'un équipement puissant.
They'd learned the American way so well that they now sent cars back across the Atlantic and competed with America on its own terms. Americans discovered there were other ways to see the USA than in their Chevrolets.
Count the foreign cars in this picture. We'll even help you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are dealerships that look like this in Darien, Connecticut, Washington, D.C., Denver, Colorado, and Detroit, Michigan. Motown, USA. They've come a long way in just 22 years. They are not the enemy. They're the competition.
But for men like Bill Shea, memories of World War II were still fresh. The reinvigoration of Germany through the Marshall Plan seemed unfair and a threat to American workers.
We had plenty of people here that needed the jobs, you know, and we weren't such good guys that we should give all of this stuff away. And I would say within 2 years or 3, they almost took over the automobile business. And I actually got to the point where I hated to see one, and I hated to see the people come in with one. You know, I had a feeling like, of all of the things for this guy to buy, he has to buy a damn German car.
But for Germany, selling cars to America was one of the keys to economic recovery. For 5 years, unemployment never rose above 1%. There was a shortage of workers. George Steger felt like a rich man.
Through our work, we gained self-respect, confidence. We felt we were somebody. We could buy things. That meant something, and we enjoyed it. We could dress up and show off like film stars. They'd always been dream figures to us. We used to see them, but their lives seemed so far away. But not anymore. Now we'd become somebody.
C'était comme un conte de fées, parce qu'on voyait toutes ces choses.
It was like a fairy tale when we saw all these things, and as the prices got cheaper, we could buy them, and it wasn't a luxury to get a refrigerator.
C'était un luxe d'avoir un réfrigérateur. Après, ça a été une machine à laver, et puis plus tard.
Then it was a washing machine. Then we had our own dishwasher. That was no longer a luxury. It wasn't an inaccessible dream.
C'était pas un rêve inaccessible.